Alrighty, welcome back. This is my Logan lathe. As you can see, I need to clean it up. I don't necessarily like having a big mess like that, but I also don't like cleaning, so there you go. What I want to do today, though, is I want to talk about this. This is I believe it's called a lantern style tool holder, and you got this little kind of a curved piece on the bottom, and you can kind of use that to adjust the height of the cutter. But this right here is probably the main thing I don't like about my lathe. I love my lathe, even though it's old. It's got a few issues, but don't we all? But that thing right there, I absolutely dislike that thing right there. And for years, even before I had this lathe, when I had the other smaller lathe, I've wanted to get a quick change tool post, but I kept putting it off and putting it off for a couple of reasons. One reason is because I've never owned one, so I had a lot of questions and I didn't really know how to answer those questions. Come to find out, you just Google it and the answers are like right there, but apparently I didn't think of that. But one of the questions I had was, how do I order a tool post, a quick change tool post that will fit the T slot here? Well, the simple answer for that is you don't. When you order one of those, it comes with a blank steel block that you have to machine to fit that. So for those of you who are considering doing the same thing, and it is possible maybe I'm the last person to actually use one of these things. I don't know. I mean, these work. They're fine. They're just kind of a pain in the butt to get set just right. And every time you change a cutter, you got to readjust it. And I just don't like it. If any of you are still using these and you like it, well, that's fine. Use what you like, use what you prefer. It's just that for me, I don't want it anymore. But again, when you get a new quick change tool post, you have to machine the T-nut yourself out of a blank block that they give you. So that's what the focus of this video is. Also, another question I had was, I didn't know what size to get. You go online and you look and there's all different sizes and there's a couple of main styles, and I didn't know which was best. I didn't know what to get until I finally Googled it and started looking into it and answered some of my questions. So I thought what I would do this video is show you what I got, show you what I need to do to get it mounted onto here, and hopefully maybe answer some of your questions. Maybe your first thought was to go to YouTube and get some of your questions answered, and hopefully this video can help you out. So anyways, let's go to the bench and I'll show you what I got. Okay, so let's talk about what I've got here. Now again, I got this on eBay, and there's several to choose from. And I figured that anything less than about, I don't know, 500 bucks or $700 or $800 is going to be coming from China or made in China. So, I've seen these range in price from as little as $100 all the way up to a few $1,000. Now, if you don't know this about me from previous videos, I'll go ahead and tell you again. I am kind of cheap. I don't like spending a lot of money on stuff. I typically buy the cheaper of whatever. But I didn't want junk. So I'm thinking, if I buy the absolute cheapest one available, it's probably going to be junk. So I bought the third cheapest one I could find. And now it's a 5-piece set, actually a 6-piece set. This is the main part. I'll show you the other pieces here in a second. Just to show you the box, this is the box that it came in right here. Quick change tool post. So you can see all the parts there. And I'll show you each of those individually. And actually, that's not even the one that was in the box. This is a different style than what I got. And I'll explain that here in a second. This gives you an idea of the size. We'll talk about sizes here in just a second. The box came rather beat up. The hole in the box was from from one of these posts that had punched through the box. It seems okay. Obviously, I haven't used it yet, but it seems pretty good quality. I don't see anything noticeably just terrible about it just yet. So hopefully it's all right. Now, as far as the styles, there's two main styles that I've seen. This one is called a wedge style. Basically, when you turn the knob, you can see this wedge moving up or down. And the tool holder has a dovetail that goes over top of that. And so then when you turn that, the wedge goes down and it locks it in place. The other style, which is actually the photo on the box, has a piston right here in the middle. So when you turn the handle, which the handle is right here, I haven't put the handle together yet. When you turn the handle, the piston pushes out. That is actually, from what I have read, that is actually a cheaper way to do it, and it's not as secure. Now, they work fine. I mean, people have been using that style forever. They work fine. It's just that this way is slightly more better, but they're both fine. If you're trying to, save a few bucks, you might want to go with the piston type. Now, for me, the piston one was only a little bit cheaper. It's like maybe 20 or 30 bucks cheaper. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. If I'm going to get it and use it, I might as well get the one that I want to get. We have two sets of dovetails here, so you could have two holders, one side or the other. And the way this mounts to the lathe is with this post here. And remember I said I didn't know how to order one with a T-nut that would fit my lathe, and I said, well, the answer to that is you don't. You get basically a square blank right here. And you have to machine that into a T-slot that will fit your lathe. So what I'm going to have to do is machine that shorter. I'm going to leave the length, but I need to machine that shorter so it'll fit into the slot. And then I have to machine down a ledge this way so it looks like a T, and then that will slide into the T-slot. And I think I need to shorten it just a tiny bit. I think the whole thing's just a little bit too tall. So I'm going to have to put this in the milling machine and get the shape that I need. We'll do that here in just a second. And of course, then this screws into that, and that goes over, obviously the nut comes off, and then that goes down on there, the nut goes on, and now you're mounted to the lathe. Now this whole thing is coated in oil. Guess you can see the shine. I think I'm going to have to clean all that. I guess it was like an assembly or shipping oil. We'll be cleaning all that off and lubing it properly at some point. And of course we got the handle. Got the knob that screws onto the handle, and then that screws onto there. And then there's your handle to lock your tool piece down. Now, as far as the sizes go, this is the one thing that I really didn't know, and I still don't quite remember. Okay, let me just interrupt for a second. I take that back. Instead of rambling on for the next 5 minutes about something I don't remember, I went ahead and just looked it up. So this is as best as I can find online as far as sizes for these. So first you have OXA, and that will fit lathes with a swing up to an 8-inch swing. And by the way, I fully understand that my handwriting has not improved any since about the 3rd grade. So I apologize if you have a hard time reading something. I'll do my best. So again, OXA, that's for lathes with a swing up to 8 inches. To find your lathe size, you measure from the bed up to the center point of the chuck. So basically, the biggest diameter you can turn. All right, so if you can turn a part up to 8 inches in diameter, OXA. The next one is AXA, and that's going to be pretty much 8 to 12 inch. 8 to 12 inch. The next one would be BXA, and that's going to be for lathes 10 to 15 inch, which is what I got. So I could have got an AXA. That'd be right in the range of that. But again, from what I was reading on a couple of different websites, if your size kind of overlaps between two, you're supposed to pick the bigger size. So I'm at the lower end of this, which is going to give me a kind of a heftier, chunkier tool holder for my lathe. So I'm hoping that means I'll have a little bit more rigidity, maybe, I don't know. Next size is going to be CXA. And that's going to be for 13 to 18 inch. And then there's CA. Why it's not DXA, I have no clue. And that's going to be 14 to 20 inch. And then we have DA, and that's going to be 17 to 48 inch. So that's what I found. Depending on what websites you read or whatever, you might find slightly different numbers here. Maybe, I don't know. It seems like I did see something else out of slightly different something. But this is basically, as best as I could tell, this is basically what you want. And so what I went with was, again, I went with the BXA. That's what I ordered. And so again, when you look at this, 250. So I think the 250 corresponds to BXA. So everything, all of my pieces have a 250. And then the dash number is the component itself. So anyways, so we'll get back to where I cut into. But as far as the sizes go, so this is 250. So you got a 250-222. And then when you look at the tools, we've got, this is a 250-210. This is a knurling tool. We've got a 250-207. This is to hold a parting off tool. We have a 250-204. This is to hold a large boring bar. We have a 250-202. This is to hold a normal cutter or a smaller boring bar. This has a little V notch in the bottom shelf there. So 250, 202. So all of these are 250. And then the dash number is the type of tool holder. And then we have this one, which I have a little tiny cutter put in there. This is a 250-201. But I already know that there's another one that I need to get. I need to get a 250 I don't even know, I got to look it up. Because I want to be able to use these holders that went into lantern style, and those are too big to fit in there. So it needs to be like another 1/4 inch deeper. So I got to do some research and figure out what number has for a deeper holding or holder. I mean, I can use this one. This will fit in there. So those type of cutters will fit. That little tiny one will fit. But anything bigger like that is not going to fit. And I know they make them because I saw them on eBay. I just have to go back and look and see what they have. And the nice thing about the quick change tool holder is you can adjust the height. And that's the main benefit, or one of the main benefits between this and a lantern style, is you can set the height. So when you put this on, when you put that on, it'll always go to the same height as set by that knob here. So you just slide it on, it goes to the same height every time, you lock it down, and that's it. So if you take this off to use another one, then you put this one back on, you don't have to readjust the height. It's set and ready to go. Now, one issue that I'm having, if I lower this pretty much all the way down, that just makes the right level that I need to cut. And if I use this one, if I use one like that, it doesn't quite get it. It's just, I can't get it quite low enough. When we take this back over to the lathe, I'll show you kind of why and what that looks like and what my plan is for that. Okay, so what I've done is I just sat that on top of the compound, that's where it will set. And I've adjusted that cutter to where it's on center line of the spindle. And again, you can adjust that with the set knob here. And so now if I take that off and put it back on, it'll be right where I put it. Now, if I put in this cutter is quite a bit taller than the one that's in there. If I put this cutter in, I can't get this low enough for it to be on the center line. I kind of run out of travel. So in order to use this cutter, I need this whole block to be lowered. And the only way I can really do that is if I remove the compound and then mount it to here, which I can do. It's held on with a couple of nuts. I'll just have to make a steel plate to then mount to that and then put the tool post holder on that. But for now, I just want to get it mounted to this. And then in another video, I'll come back and I'll make a plate to put it on here. Because even with mounted it here, I can use about, I don't know, half my cutters. It's just the bigger, taller cutters I won't be able to use as all. So let me get it mounted to here, and then later we'll worry about, mounting it to this. And I could always go back and forth. This is pretty easy to take on and off. So what I need to do is I need to machine that block down to fit in here. So, like we said, I need to machine that block down so it'll slide into here. So I got a lot of material to remove. All right, so here's those measurements. What I need is 35 millimeters wide, 7.7 millimeter step, and then 5.25 millimeters end, and that part 25.25. That's the T-nut shape that I need. The actual height from here to here, I'll do that later. This pencil outline here, that's roughly representing the shape of the block itself. It's a little bit too tall, but I'll deck that off later once I get this fitting in the slot. So right now the block is 70 millimeters wide, so I got to take off 17.1 millimeters off of each end to keep the threaded hole centered, and that will give me the 35.8. So if we take a look at the block then, this edge is 70 millimeters, this edge is 76, I think. But I scribed in the lines. That line is where this part gets cut off, and then that's where the step goes down to make the T-nut shape. That drawing is not to scale, but you can see here what has to come off. So that whole end here comes off, and then that step comes off, and then same here. I think I'll try to take the bulk of that off in the bandsaw, and then clean the rest up on the milling machine. All right, that actually cut very nicely on the bandsaw. Now I just did one because if I cut both sides, then I'm going to lose a square side. So I'm going to use that side as a square reference to mill that side parallel to this. So now that'll be a square side. Then I can cut that off and use that square side to mill that side. So I'm going to set this up in the milling machine vertically and just end mill that flat. And again, that'll give me a good reference to then do that side. All right, so let's go get this set up in the mill. All right, so I think that cutter will work. And so again, I'm going to mill to that line. Now, I actually want to get the direct dimension here. The line is more of a sanity check. I don't want to just go to the line. I want the actual dimension because I want to keep that threaded hole center. I mean, it doesn't really have to be, but I want it to be. So I have that mounted in with a little bit of overhang so that once I get that decked off, I can then measure that dimension here and then use the DRO to then go down the correct amount to get that dimension correct. Then I can cut the other side off and then put it back in and flatten off that other side. So let's just see how this goes. cutter is just a little bit too small in diameter to get it all in one pass. But that feels like a nice finish. I'm actually pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to set my Z to 0. And I'm going to measure this and then figure out how much more I need to take off. And I'll just keep doing that. I'm not going to make you watch me do all of that, but I'll just do that till that's ready, and we'll come back. We'll come back when that part's done. All right, here's that piece off of the milling machine, and you can see my scribe lines here where I need to mill the step to make the T-nut, and I kind of just marked out here so you can see that corner comes off and that corner comes off. So I will just mount this in the milling machine. I will find the edge. I'll use the DRO to mill over and down the correct amount. And again, with my drawing here, you can see I need to mill over 5.275 millimeters. And I need to come down. The thickness here is 7.7. And I need to take off 1 millimeter off the top in order to get it to the right overall height. If you remember, the main block is a little bit too tall. So I'll actually take off 1.5 millimeters. If I just take off 1, it would be flush with the slot that it's going to go in. So I'll take off 1.5 millimeters. So then I need to measure down to get the overall height here. That would be the 14.85 minus the 7.7, but then again minus another 1.5 to get that height there. Let me just finish the milling, and then we'll see if it fits. I mean, it should, I hope. But yeah, let me get back with you here in just a minute. Okay, there it is, all machined up and done. I did take about a little over 1 millimeter off the top. I used this fly cutter here. But let me get this off of the mill. I'll run a file over all the edges, and then we'll take a look at it and see what it looks like, and see if it fits. Okay, so that's what it looks like off the milling machine, and you know, I'll be completely honest with you. When I took it off the milling machine and I went to fit it, I had succeeded in making an interference press fit, which is not what you want. You know, you want that to slide in nice and easy. You don't want it to be flopping loose, but you don't want to have to press it in. So I actually put it back on the milling machine, and I took just a tiny bit off of basically each surface. I took maybe 1/4 millimeter off here and here. Same thing with there. Well, like I said, every surface I took just a tiny bit off, and then I went ahead and ran the end mill across the top. Took another, I don't know, 1/2 millimeter off of that, just because I didn't like the fly cut surface. So now this thing fits really well. We'll go over to the lathe here in a second, take a look at it. But first, you know, this bar can thread in, and then we can take this over to the lathe and see how that fits in the lathe. All right, now one other thing I had to do, I noticed that it would go in nice and then kind of get tight a little bit. I ran a file up under the edge here and I could still feel a little bit of a burr right there. Because you got to realize this is going to take a lot of abuse, and this thing is really old. So there's a few little dings up under the side there. So I just ran a file under there, and that really helps quite a bit. So now if we take this and we put it in, now you can see, how nicely that fits in there. Just a tiny bit of rock back and forth, but you don't have to like force it in. You don't want to have to press it in or hammer it in. In my mind, this is pretty much a perfect fit. Not too loose, definitely not too tight. Also, you got to make sure the surface of this is below the surface here and here. Because when you tighten up the tool holder, it's going to basically pull up on that shaft. It's going to pull this up, and you want to make sure that the main block clamps down on that surface and that surface. If that surface is proud of that surface, then it's going to clamp it down to that, and the whole thing will still be loose. All right, so that's the fit that you want. Now, obviously, I used a milling machine to cut the step into here and get it to the right width. If you don't have a milling machine, you could clamp that into a 4-jaw chuck to get the thickness correct and to square up and cut down the ends. I would highly recommend cutting most of it off with a hacksaw or a bandsaw, like I did. Otherwise, you're going to be turning off, half an inch of material there. So again, you can use the lathe and a bandsaw to get the width right and the height right. Now, to get the step in here, you're not really going to be able to use a lathe for that, unless you have or make a mill attachment for your lathe. So if you have or make a mill attachment for your lathe, like this one I made, it still has some stuff on it I need to take off. But if you have something like this, you could then use your lathe to mill those cutouts to make the T. If you don't have a milling machine and you don't have a mill attachment, then you basically have two other options. First option is to make a friend that has a milling machine. The second option is to use a hacksaw, cut down this way, cut in that way, and then clean it up with a file. It probably won't be pretty, but as long as it's functional, then that's all that really matters. Now, you could make it pretty with a hacksaw and files. Just takes a lot of patience and a lot of work, but you could do it. The main important thing is to make sure that the height here and the height here are the same, because if you accidentally make one too low, when you clamp everything down, it's going to kind of tweak everything over and it's going to bind everything up, and it could put some stress on the piece here or here, and it just wouldn't clamp right. So again, the main reason I'm saying all of this is because if you are going to install one of these quick change tool posts for the first time, you've never had one before, like me, I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't realize I was going to have to cut that down to fit the T-slot until I did some research online. If I just would have ordered it and bought it without doing any research, I would not have known I was going to have to do that. So again, for those of you who don't have a milling machine, then just realize you're going to have to figure out how to do that some other way. You're going to be spending a ton of time with a hacksaw and files if you don't have a milling machine or a friend that has a milling machine. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that. So if we put the main piece on here, like so, and then we put the nut on. Once you snug up that nut, notice it is really tight now. And that's just finger tight. I mean, obviously that's not good enough for working or for turning with, but even just finger tight, that thing is locked on there. Again, if you made your T-nut too tall, you'd still be able to move it around. All right, and again, I still need to make the handle to go in here. Well, make the handle. I need to screw it in, is all. But as you can see, you put your tool holder on, you tighten it down, and now you're ready to go. And you can adjust the height, and nice and easy. Let's go back over to the bench real quick. I do want to talk about these numbers just a little bit more. Okay, now earlier I said that these are rated on the size based on the swing of your lathe. Remember I showed earlier I had this, right? And I said mine is a BXA because I have a 10-inch swing. And I'm actually, you know, if you actually measure mine, it's closer to like 10 and a half. Again, I could have gone with an AXA, but that would have been a slightly smaller unit, and maybe that would work better. But again, in my mind, I think heavier and beefier is going to be more robust. Probably have less chatter. That's my hope anyways. But anyways, one question I have that I'm still trying to figure out, and I thought I had it figured out, but then I realized I didn't. When you look at the numbers on the piece here, notice that does not say BXA or whatever. It says 250-222. So I was assuming that 250 was for a BXA. But one table that I was looking at online, and I just did a Google search for quick change tool post, numbering size charts, and I got a whole bunch of images. One of them I found online said that this piece for, I don't think it had OXA, it had AXA, but it said AXA, it was 250-111, BXA was 250-222, CXA was 250-333, and I think CA was 444. So kind of a pattern there. But if that's the case, then that 250 is not the size, it's that number here would be the size. But yet, when you look at the other tool holders, all of these have 250 with a dash whatever. And that dash number is the type of tool holder it is. I did find a table that gave all of those. So on the holders, the dash number is the type of tool holder, but on this, the dash number is the size. I can't make heads or tails of the numbering system here. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. If any of you know how to simply explain it in like 10 words or less, please put it in the comments. But for you ordering one of these for the first time, if you just, you know, like if you go on eBay or whatever, you just put in quick change tool post, you'll see like in the descriptions of them, OXA, AXA, BXA, and then some of them will have the numbers here. So it just seems kind of weird that this is a size BXA, but nowhere on here says BXA. So somehow that's got to be a size, but I have not figured out the numbering system yet. There's probably a website that explains it very perfectly clear, but I don't know that yet. So like I said, if any of you know how to explain the numbering system very simply and to the point, please put it in the comments because I would love to know, and I'm sure other watchers who came to my video to learn stuff would also like to know that. But anyways, so right now, this is usable on my lathe with that T-nut that I made. But like I said before, I'm only going to be able to use about half of my cutters. I could use low short cutters because I can get it down low enough. But if I use a taller cutter, I can't use it. All right, now, let's go back over to the lathe. I want to make one more point and then this video will be done because it's way too long. Okay, the reason why I said that if I just leave it like this, I can only use half my cutters, I think I showed earlier on how I have to lower the tool like as far down as it can go to get the cutter to be on the center line height, right? But if I get rid of this and I mount this directly on here, then that would lower the whole thing like, I don't know, 2 inches, give or take, 1.5 inches. So what I'm going to do in a future video, not this one, because like I said, this one's already way too long, and but in a future video, I will take this off and I will make a plate, and I will also at some point clean my lathe, but I'll make a plate that will mount onto the cross slide to replace this. Then I can mount that right to that plate, and that would lower it down quite a bit, and that would allow me to use all of my cutters. And then if I need to make a taper, I can put this one back on. Most of my turning, I don't do a lot of tapers. So I could do most of my turning without this and the other one, and then just put this back on for the tapers. Plus, with this off and it mounted right to here, I think that'd give me a lot more rigidity. Um, but anyways, like I said, this video has been going on way too long. I'm going to end it here. I feel like I've been talking way too much. And as always, until next time, thanks for watching.